It's Fiction Friday, and yeah, it's time to get caught up on what I'm working on, a little bit about the writing life, and just sheer and utter chaos, confusion, self-destructive thoughts, the usual. Mainly about planning and plans, and how they, at least for me, are hard to keep an eye on. Yeah, let's talk about all that on today's episode of Project Shadow.
Can you hear me? I have something to say. Project Shadow starts now.
Hello everyone, how are you doing today? My name's Charlie. You might know me better as sci-fi fantasy writer C.E. Dorset. And sci-fi fantasy really is the problem right now. Not really a problem. So, yeah, a lot of things have been going on. And if this week I sounded a bit distracted, I was. As you all, well, if you've been listening to the podcast for any period of time, you might know that my husband and I, we run a restaurant. And one of our chefs recently got sick with, let's just say, symptoms that did not bode well. And we've been waiting for their test to come back to see what's going on. And they don't have the plague. Which is good. They have something else, and we don't know what it is. So that's fun. But it's probably just a flu that's still lingering around in the area. But yeah, it was a bit nerve-wracking because, shortness of breath, fever, all that good stuff. And because we're a small restaurant and everybody, they wear masks and all that, but you never know. You never know. So yeah, it's been a nerve-wracking kind of week, and hopefully the Rona will pass us by and we won't have to worry about it. But I don't know what kind of blood to put over the lentil to make that happen. Yeah. So it's that's one of the reasons why I've probably sounded a bit distracted this week. But life, chaos, all of that goes into our writing process, all of it. And it can make the stories better if we learn how to sublimate all of that stress into story. It's one of the things I think in some ways makes this podcast better, because no matter what's going on, this is the one thing that I can consistently do. And so I will often focus all of my energy and effort into making this podcast happen. I don't like working on multiple stories at the same time. And you all know that I have plans. I'm currently working on the space opera. I'm currently working on the Princess Rescue Squad books. And while I'm trying not to let myself fall into new story syndrome, I had just an image that for years has been persistently harassing me and popping back up and popping back up and popping back up. And it popped back up again, and I wasn't feeling too well. I didn't really feel like getting much done. I noticed that, I forgot who it was, somebody on YouTube was having a write-in. And I thought, well, here's what I'll do. I'll join the write-in. I'll do the sprints with them. If words come out, words come out. If words don't come out, words don't come out. But here's your time. Get out my head. Just get out my head. And I started writing. And I like what I'm writing. So I may have started a third project. Yet again with another non-binary hero. Because, are you noticing a trend here? It's like, yeah. So, I don't know what's going to happen with this. This is a much more urban fantasy story, a very dark urban fantasy story. kind of like the thing that, I really enjoy watching and reading, which is an unfair thing to say because I really like sci-fi. I really like a lot of genre fiction, but I've dabbled in dark urban fantasy before. This looks like it's going to be a bit different, and it's flowing. And to me, at least right now, see, let me go back to the beginning. If we weren't going through the current international crisis, I would really be telling everyone to focus. I would be telling you to batten down the hatches, pick a project, and push and push and push until it's done. Stay focused, stay on track. Because I agree with Courtney from the Courtney Project that complacency is something that really hurts writing careers, especially self-published writing careers. And yes, if you are blessed with the ability to stay focused, do it. Do it. It will help your career. It will help your writing. It will help everything that you do. For me, right now, with my anxiety and depression issues, any day I get words down is a victory. And I need as many victories as I can get. So while I am not going to let myself just flitter along and write 100 beginnings of projects, I am going to put limits on it. And I do have kind of a natural set of limits in that I tend to write science fiction. I tend to write urban fantasy, and I tend to write epic fantasy. If you're not one of those three genres, you're out. I'm not entertaining new work right now. I also am trying to stay focused with each story as I'm going forward. But progress and being able to work on our craft is more important than stubbornness. Especially in times like these, which honestly, I know you're probably getting tired of hearing that phrase, and I'm really getting tired of saying that because y'all know I'm a Ghost fan, and I feel like every day when I turn on the news, I just hear rats in the back of my head. In times of turmoil, in times like these, beliefs contagious, spreading disease. And yeah, that's not necessarily about, plagues. It's about, how crazy ideas go crazy and harm everything. But it feels oddly appropriate. It feels oddly appropriate right now. Anyway, in times like these, any work that we're able to get done, any creativity that we're able to have, any progress, any forward momentum is good. Any activity that keeps us moving towards our goals and keeps us away from the marshes of despair is good. Because it's easy to get mired down. It's easy to get bogged down. It's easy to get trapped. It's easy to get stuck. So whatever you find that you can work on, you should be working on it. Just to keep yourself going. Now, that does pose problems when it comes to, say, our plans. I was planning on doing the book launch for the second book in my Mask of the Gods series coming up just about in a month or two. And like I said, I stopped that because it just didn't feel... It felt almost exploitative because I wrote 3 books that are a deep meditation on death. And then this happened. And one, I know I don't feel like working on them. I don't feel like editing them, spending all that time in that dark subject matter right now is something that I am not wanting to do, even though some people may be wanting to do it. It's not working for me. And because of that, I feel like it would just be inappropriate to put those books out right now. I really... Book 2 is about a mysterious plague that starts hitting a town. Yeah, no, that's not what we're going to do right now. I can't in good conscience put that book out. So my plans have been shelved. Like my entire 2020 plans, I've had to put in a box and slide over. And I have been in process of trying to put together a new plan for this year. Because even in this kind of willy-nilly, airy-fairy world that I live in, where as long as work is getting done, it's good, we still have to have goals. If you're not working towards something, if you're not striving towards something, you run the risk of just treading water. And right now, while it's important to keep our heads above water, we really need to be doing that. We need hope. We need something to reach out for. And that can be tricky. So, how am I making plans when I don't actually know the story that I'm working on? Well, I know the publishing model that I want to move my work towards. That's actually one of the things that's been really interesting with this new story is it's the first story that I really get to test that in. Because if you remember a week or two ago, I did an episode about how I restructured the way I'm doing Scrivener, where I created a spreadsheet to break out the word count for each beat in the Save the Cat story for a story of a certain length. And then I created templates to help me keep on track with that. So instead of using the files in my Scrivener document, at least at face value, to be a full scene, each file is either one beat or part of a beat so that I can keep myself on track. You know, this beat should be about this many words. This beat should be about this many words. And yeah, I've been playing around with that. And one of the things that I found is, you know, as a pantser, somebody who's doing zero drafts, especially with these ideas like the one I'm having right now, that I don't know where it's going. It was an image. It didn't have any characters. It didn't really have a setting. It didn't have story. It was just an image. And well, the first thing you do in Save the Cat is write the image, right? The opening image. So I wrote the opening image expecting that to be where the story ended. And then characters started popping in. And as characters popped in, story started popping in. And then more characters and more story. And oh, this is taking place in my Dragons of Night world. Okay. Well, we've never had characters like that in there. How do they fit in? And everything started connecting to the greater whole. Templates help, especially if you're a pantser, to keep your ideas structured, keep yourself focused, because I could have easily meandered, and there were a couple places where I wanted to meander. But because this is the zero draft, and I wanted to have a completed chapter, and I have a chapter template that I'm trying to follow, using Save the Cat to plot the template, the chapter. Yeah, I know what beat I'm on, I know where I'm at in the chapter, I know where the story needs to go, and I'm able to basically keep the story on track to get a finished chapter. Well, that's helpful. And then from there, I can see where I want to go. Is this a story worth reading? Is it a story worth spending the time on? I've shared what I've gotten written so far with Brian, and he's really interested. He wants to know more, and I do too. So I'm curious to see how this is all going to work in the end. But I still have my goals, and I'm not making them public just because I feel like there will be more pressure on me to do it. And right now, the last thing I need is more pressure, because, you know, I was already a hermit to begin with, and now I'm not agoraphobic. I go outside. I help take care of my folks, and so I live in a house just down the road from them that my grandfather built. So, you know, I'm very fortunate that way. And so I have a lawn and I have a deck. And so I can still go outside and I don't freak out when I go outside, but the idea of being around people is kind of horrifying to me right now. It's always been problematic, but it's kind of horrifying for me right now. And, everything with the business and the world, I don't need to add pressure by publicly announcing some of the things that I'm wanting to do. So I'm not. But I have those goals still sitting there. Right there, next to my desk, as I'm recording this, is my brown journal that has all of my work goals in it. And I pull it out and I keep an eye on it. I know what I want to do. I know what I need to get done to do those things. And right now, at least as far as the projects that I'm writing, I'm like, okay, so this is going to be a first past the post. I'm doing a little bit of writing over here, a little bit of writing over there. Whichever story hits this threshold first, that's the one. It wins. They're horse racing right now. Because I know my goal to do the things that I wanted to do this year, which I still think that I can do. I need a story of a certain length. I need a story of, a certain kind. And as long as I can hit those beats, as long as I can hit those points in my plan, I'm good. So I'm trying to focus my energy and effort where it's easy to flow right now. And I'm trying to keep those goals in mind as I'm working. So I know that I want to get better at having more of, not necessarily episodic chapters. I feel like my chapters have always been rather arbitrary, and I'm wanting to apply more of that Kisho Tenketsu and that Save the Cat ideology to them. So, and for anybody who's new, if you want me to do another episode on Kisho Tenketsu, I can do that. It's a Japanese method for plotting a story that I am quite fond of. So let me know if you want me to do another episode on that. I would be glad to. Just ask about the Japanese thing if you don't feel like trying to figure out how to spell Kisho Tenketsu. Anyway. So that's the primary important thing to do right now, is just to protect your creativity. At least for me. My anxiety is running wild, but is still manageable at this point in time. I'm doing the best that I can to get to the place where I can make it manageable, even more manageable. I'm hoping to get to a place where I can afford to get therapy with BetterHelp. I've gotten a quote from them on how much it'll cost to get a therapist, which is cheaper than doing it locally, especially since as a business owner and as a writer, we don't have insurance. And with everything going on right now, money being money. So I have plans for that too. And that for me is hope. Because the biggest thing about my own depressive issues is I get to a point where I cannot imagine a future. And I know that I cannot allow myself to get there. So as long as I'm thinking about, what am I going to be doing later this year? What am I going to be doing next year? What am I going to be doing 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now? Knowing that none of those plans are rigid and any of them could change at any time, but still maintaining that focus and making myself plan for the future, whether I want to believe that those things are possible or not. That's beside the point. I'm trying to be reasonable in the plans that I'm making, but at the same time, we need to understand, especially as writers, because I think a lot of writers have anxiety and depressive issues, which is a weird stereotype, but for a lot of the writers that I know, it's a valid one. You have to make sure that you're differentiating between what's a reasonable plan for the future and what's just your anxiety telling you Well, you can't do anything better than that. You need to learn to discern the difference between those two things because they're not the same thing, and it's easy to confuse them. But yeah, I have a plan going forward. I am writing again, which is huge. I've not been really writing for a while, and it feels so good to actually be doing it. I like the story that I'm working on. I like the characters that have started coming up. A couple in particular I'm really fond of. And we'll see where this all goes. But it's going to go somewhere. And that's what I know I have to keep telling myself. It has to go somewhere. I hope you found this helpful. I try to do more instructive or detailed or outlined topics most of the time. But, for these Fiction Fridays, I like to just open up and talk about what's actually going on. And that's where I'm at right now. So I would love to know where you are. And also, if you have any questions, comments, or topics you'd like to hear discussed on the show, down in the show notes, you'll find a link to the voice message system. Keep it short, keep it clean. I would love to hear from you. You can also hit me up on social media. I'm C. Dorsett on both Twitter and Instagram, and you can find links to everything that I do over at projectshadow.com. Yeah, I hate this part, especially right now, but if you have a buck you can pass my way, down in the show notes, you'll find a link to both listener support and my Patreon. Don't do it if you can't afford it. But thank you to everyone who does. It really does mean the world to me. It helps. It helps so much. You have no idea. If you don't have any money right now or you don't feel like giving, first of all, just listening to the show helps. The ads I do make money off of. So just listening to the show does help. And, sharing the show so that more people listen helps out a lot. If you're not already checking it out, I have started a new Star Trek podcast called Banned from Argo, where I discuss, right now, I'm doing a deep dive through Star Trek Picard, character by character, and how that can hopefully improve in season 2. Season 1 wasn't terrible. It had some issues that really bugged me. And we've kind of talked about it a little bit on this podcast, and we're going to talk about it in a different way and a lot more detail over there. And that's a weekly show. Alrighty. Well, that's it for me today. Thank you so much for listening. It really does mean the world to me. And until next time, stay well, stay safe, and don't forget to have the fun. Bye.